American Express is not a customer of Leena AI, and Shoma's appearance on the podcast does not constitute an endorsement of Leena AI by American Express.
Hello, and a warm welcome to the next episode of the AI Edge podcast presented by Leena AI. Today, I have with me Shoma Chakravarty, the SVP and Chief Architect at American Express, a company I absolutely admire. Welcome on the show, Shoma.
It's a pleasure to be here, Adit.
To get us started, I'd love to know more about your journey and role at AMEX, Shoma, and also some things that make AMEX so special.
You introduced me as the chief architect at American Express, and I want to share that I love my job and I'm thrilled to be part of the family that's at American Express. It's a unique company. It's 175 years old, yet every day it is innovating and reinventing itself on behalf of its customers. It's an exciting place to be from a technology perspective. We're constantly at the cutting edge, experimenting, trying new things, delivering new products, experiences. I think I've had a really interesting journey up to this point, getting to this place, and looking forward to sharing some of it with you.
Absolutely, Shobha. You mentioned everything about AMEX and what makes it great, but can you also talk a bit more about your journey? I know you started off with IBM after doing your master's in the US, but would love to hear a little bit more about your journey to become the SVP and Chief Architect at AMEX.
I started my career in the late 1990s in IBM as a programmer. It was a very exciting time to join the software engineering workforce. We were on the cusp of the internet revolution. Object-oriented programming, Java, had just been launched. In the years to follow, mobile application development, embedded computing came of age. So it was a very exciting time to be writing programs, distributed software, and that's where I learned to learn, I guess, is how I'd put it.
Wow. Oh, absolutely. I remember being, I was still in grade school back then. So, I remember writing my first Python in a school curriculum. And it just blew my mind away. I think one of the assignments was to create a game. And it was probably the most liberating experience of my life, that you can actually build things with your own hands as well, right? But great to be here, and in this overall experience that you've had, in this overall journey that you've had, what are some of the most rewarding experiences that you've had with AI? I know over the last 20-30 years there has been so much, especially in the last 4 or 5. It's just completely changed the world. But we've seen other shifts as well over the last 20-30 odd years, and I'd love to hear from you. What are some of the most rewarding experiences across your journey you've had with AI, GenAI, machine learning, anything?
Yeah, let me start by talking about what we're recently doing at American Express. As I mentioned earlier, innovation is in our DNA, and we have a long history of employing new technologies. In fact, we were among the first financial services company to embrace AI, starting with our use of machine learning back in 2010 to help protect our card members from fraud. And over the years, we've consistently expanded our use of responsible AI. Most recently, our experience with traditional AI has allowed us to be on the forefront of experimenting experimenting with and responsibly adopting generative AI. So I think what I wanted to share is that presently we have many use cases using generative AI at American Express, and I think that's been a really exciting space in the recent past. But if I could go back to when it all started, I was at IBM at the time that also Hadoop was launched as open source software. I don't know if I'm using words that you're completely unfamiliar with, but I think the availability of technologies that could process data at velocity, large amounts of data at high velocity, really changed the application of AI. And I was doing a lot of work in the telecommunications industry. And early on in my journey, I had a chance to work with machine learning algorithms to work on telco use cases.
That's amazing, Shoma. You mentioned you have a lot of use cases with generative AI, and what are these use cases? What are you what are you trying to do? Is it more customer experience? Is it more efficiencies? Is it productivity? Um, what are these use cases? So we have in our audience typically CIOs, CTOs, CFOs, like C-level execs, and also chief architects and architecture leadership of enterprises who are listening. And so, what are some of the low-hanging fruit that you think people should attack using AI, agentic AI, or LLMs, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So I'm happy to share a couple of use cases at American Express, but I want to start by saying that our experience and our mission at American Express is to do everything with trust, security, service. And so we've used that to guide our foray into generative AI. We've built an ecosystem that has guardrails to allow us to do work with generative AI responsibly. And that includes a lot of technology enablement foundations, such as to check for hallucinations, to have a firewall, to make sure that the data is of high integrity and quality. A couple of use cases that I'll mention is, we have a travel counselor assist application that provides travel planning support to our travel counselors. And this uses generative AI to provide high quality and efficient travel recommendations and insights. This is something that we've scaled out to 5,000 of our travel counselors who service Platinum and Centurion Card members. That's one use case. We also have a use case where our software engineers use an AI coding assistant to help them be more productive and be more effective at their engineering work, kind of like an assistant. I report into the CTO of American Express, and she leads the AI strategy in partnership with our CIO and other leaders in the company. So I feel like I have a front seat at all the innovation in the AI front at American Express.
I think that's amazing, Shoma. You mentioned that you have a lot of guardrails in place. You have, made sure that it does not hallucinate, and also you're giving it to your counselor, so you're not exposing it directly to the customer, which means that you're allowing for, the counselor to use their judgment before they use anything generated from the Gen AI or the LLM, essentially. So, Shoma, you mentioned one important thing about hallucination. Then you said about data, right? Like garbage in, garbage out. So we of course are an AI company. We work with a lot of CIOs globally, and one of the biggest challenges I hear all the time is about the data being bad, right? Like the knowledge in SharePoint or whatever knowledge management system they're using to be bad. And if you throw garbage, you will get garbage, right? Like it's garbage in, garbage out. So you mentioned you solved it. So I was intrigued to ask, like, what is it that you've done? Are you using some technology to clean that data up? Like, what's the modus operandi here?
You you raise an important point. Data is a critical ingredient in the correctness or the value generated by all of this AI, all of the large language models. I do not think it is having great data is not a destination. It's more of something that has to be ongoing, because there's constantly new data that's being generated or old data that's being updated. So I would like to take the perspective that it's a continuous improvement journey when it comes to data quality and data integrity. We have a culture of data governance and a lot of importance given to data architecture, data quality. And there's a whole ecosystem of tools that are at play to make sure that this is continually being replenished with the right sort of governance.
Got it. So it is more about the data governance and data modeling and data architecture, and having the right nuts and bolts in place as compared to using AI. Because if you get the basics right, you get the building right. Like that, I think that's extremely important. I do think there's very interesting opportunities in using AI for data cleaning, but I think that's going to hopefully someone builds that for us, and we can all use it, Shoma, right? I think, like you mentioned, the two use cases. One is a buddy or like an assistant to the travel advisors that you have for your platinum, and what is the other name? I'm sorry.
The AI coding assistant.
The AI coding assistant, exactly, and the AI coding assistant. So, what is the efficiency gains that you've seen, if any? Like, are they reporting back and saying that, hey, 40%? Like, so when we launched our own, when we launched coding assistant for our engineers, we got reports back up to 40% efficiency gains in terms of writing, just simple repetitive functions became very easy. What are some of the efficiency gains that you were tracking to know that yes, this is working out? Because a lot of people who are listening in today, have AI projects in play, but they don't know whether it's like how much valuable is it, right? Like, is it increasing efficiency by 1%? Is it decreasing efficiency? Because that can also happen with some of these technology and their implementation. But are you measuring something, and how are you coming back and saying that yes, this is a success versus not?
Yeah, I'm really proud to share something, which is that the first metric, the American Express experiments for the AI coding assistant measured, was developer satisfaction. And I'm really proud to be part of a culture where the first metric we measured was not efficiency. It was, wait, are the developers finding this helpful? Are they satisfied? So that's the only metric that I want to share on this call. We tracked that metric, and we have high developer satisfaction from these tools. I'm sure there are other metrics that are being tracked, but that's the one I'm most proud of, and I'd like to share.
Oh, that's amazing, Shoma. And you're right. All of us in this world keep looking at efficiency gains, but I think at the end of the day, all tooling technology is for the end user to get some time back to actually use that time to make our customers happier, right? At the end of the day, it's important to make them happy so that they can make our customers happy, right? So, moving on, can you share your perspective as a technology leader on how AI, especially agentic AI, because it's something which is very new, where it can actually go and do things on your behalf as well, right? Can be integrated into enterprise workflows and frameworks?
Absolutely, yes. The enterprise architecture function that I lead at American Express is unique. We have a lot of foundational technologies that power other applications at American Express. And even in these foundational technologies, we see a lot of opportunity to interweave with generative AI in agentic workflows and to automate, to have entire workflows automated through these agentic AI enablers. So absolutely, I think it's the beginning of the journey in this area.
Amazing. Shoma, so you mentioned, automating complete workflows end to end. On this, in this regard, like, I think one of the challenge that a lot, like I hear from the industry, is that a lot of these workflows sit across multiple applications, and some are not documented well. Some, some applications don't have APIs, etc. How do you think these challenges will be solved in the longer run? Because I completely agree with you that at the end of the day, some of the these complex enterprise workflows, they can and should be automated away with agentic AI. But the challenge is, so many applications, some processes are not documented. How are you thinking about solving this in the next 5-10 years as this space evolves?
I think that um, best practices such as having proper API contracts, having modular interfaces, having well documented code and processes, having clean data. I think these best practices don't go out of fashion, even in this wonderful, exciting, shiny world of generative AI and agentic AI. And especially, as a chief architect, my team and I, we are not abandoning the adherence to those best practices. And as a technology team at American Express, there's a tremendous emphasis on making sure that all all of our software development and software engineering um, tries as much as possible to follow the best practices that we've known and we've learned over the last like 30 years or so of scaled out software engineering.
Amazing, Shiva. Now, you brought me to a very interesting question in my mind. So I speak to a lot of leaders, right, who are starting to go down this journey of agentic AI, right? Now, the biggest question I get asked is, we don't have documentation of everything, right? Knowledge is not that, it's overlapping, it is dirty. Our systems might not have APIs. Now, all systems might not have APIs. So should we first go fix that, or should we start in some other area that still support, like that still would have APIs? So the question is like, do you wait to fix everything and then you start, or do you still start experimenting right now? And I think that's one thing which all enterprises have. Like, Leena is a small company as compared to AMEX, of course, right? And I can tell you, some of our own systems don't have APIs, right? So the question is always, do you invest in, do you wait for everything to be, great, or do you still you start taking steps today and, at least learn something with it?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing things iteratively. I don't think there will ever be a day when there will be no problems or no anti patterns in any enterprise. So I don't think the expectation that everything will be um, as good as it can be before we start innovating. But I think the culture that we have at American Express is definitely to have robust governance and insights from the work that we do, so that we can take this iterative approach. Uh, I, I would be lying if I said there's no tech debt uh, at at our enterprise. That's just not um, a state that I think is pragmatic. But I think knowing what that debt is, having vehicles to continuously make progress, those we have, and we also have lots of pockets that are in the shape that we can unlock generative AI through large language models, and in the future agentic AI as well.
Absolutely, Shobha. I think that's the best advice we also give is, you, like, there will be 100 areas start with one or two that you can, like there's high value and there's still some sense of process data that is correct or largely correct. You can't wait, else you'll be behind in this world of LLMs. Uh, when it comes to resilience, you've had a all encompassing career, Shoma. So enterprise resiliency, specifically talking about iconic companies like AMEX, right? How do you think generative AI or agentic AI or LLMs can contribute to enterprise resiliency, like if for these and such iconic companies?
We have been thinking about this at American Express. We're an integrated payments company. We're also a bank. We're also a lifestyle company. So we're very essential to our customers, and being available, having systems that are resilient is a huge priority. Um, I want to mention a unique area of resiliency that I think generative AI has a lot of potential to help with, which is sharing of knowledge. Often we find ourselves in situations where documentation or knowledge is known to a select few, but these large language models open the aperture on information and sharing of that information and making that information consumable. And that is a form of resiliency as well. And I just wanted to point it out.
Very interesting. So one of the challenges that we hear very commonly is around adoption. Now, you mentioned two use cases. One is the coding assistant. The second one was for your travel advisors, assistant for your travel advisors. So a lot of people come to us and say, hey, we built this, we bought this tool, we've created this tool, we've done this LLM, and but really nobody's using it, right? So I think like any other technology, change management is an extremely important part. But how do you drive this on the ground, Shoma? How does a leader who's releasing or working on use cases around agentic AI should think about this process of getting the right ideas into the right hands to get, at the end of the day, adoption, which leads to a lot of different types of value for the organization?
So at American Express, to foster both the innovation and the responsible adoption, we have created a lot of mechanisms to do this in a continual manner. We have taken the approach of having a council that reviews and promotes generative AI use cases to make sure that they're aligned with our strategic goals and that relevant risk considerations are factored in. The CTO, my CTO, and leader is a key member of this generative AI council, but it's a cross-functional council with leaders from the business as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have some foundational technologies as part of our ecosystem for AI, which includes some capabilities uniquely necessary for responsible generative AI, such as an AI firewall, dedicated authoritative API gateways for access. And as I mentioned, there's a governance ecosystem for data as well. So I think we have not seen the problem of reluctant adoption. We have, as I said, a technology workforce that's always adopting new things and innovating. So frankly, we have not had a problem with getting people excited and wanting to adopt this technology and ideate on new use cases.
Amazing, Shoma. So then, you've not had that problem of people adopting and getting excited. That's great, because I understand now, very high tech savvy population. That's amazing. I'm sure you would have a problem of too many ideas. Is that the case? Because we are a tech organization, of course, much smaller than yours, but at some point, like at all the points, by the way, but uh, every day we have just so too many ideas coming to create. Let's use an LLM for this, let's use agentic AI for this, let's use a generative AI for this, etc. And then how do you prioritize? These are practical problems that some of our listeners are facing today, right? Like, so how do you decide what to do and when? And then also, if you might answering, uh, what do you decide to build versus buy? Because I think that's also a big consideration into everything generative AI. Because sometimes building takes time, buying, because so outside they don't know about your company, they don't know about your culture, they don't know about your use case, etc. So there's a tussle there. First, there's a tussle on the use cases, and then on build versus buy. I'd love to have our listeners hear your thoughts on this.
Both are questions that are near and dear to my heart and my role as well. On the generative AI journey, we've been at it for almost coming up to 2 years. And throughout that time, we've learned a lot. And as I mentioned before, we've really prioritized building a solid foundation to scale the technology in a way that delivers meaningful value to our customers and colleagues. We have a brand of trust, security, and service. So we have defined a strategy and implementation mechanisms to assess that any new implementation of generative AI is well understood in terms of its business benefits as well as risks. I mentioned the Generative AI Council earlier, and it has members from across the company, including the business, including our risk teams, including our global compliance organization, senior stakeholders across the company. And we ensure that this cross-functional team is weighing in on the strategy associated with the use of Gen AI, on the technologies, and also on the implementation approaches. I think we've also taken a very unique approach. Our goal is to empower the entire company with tools, with new use cases, but it's definitely an iterative, a learn as you go approach, and it's still evolving. The other thing I wanted to highlight is that we embrace innovation in a highly regulated industry. So even as we're enabling all these processes and platforms, it's been paramount to us to have that proper risk framework to be able to implement Gen AI at scale.
So is it fair to say that you're taking you're taking all of these use cases and you're measuring them against the three pillars, which is trust, security, and service, and saying, the use cases that you choose to go ahead with have to very well connect with these three pillars of what makes AMEX AMEX?
That's a very simplified way of looking at it, but it is not far from the truth.
I will love it, Shoma. I think when it comes to, you mentioned about the governance council, right? And you mentioned there are many stakeholders. There is a AI committee. There's risks team, governance teams, and many other senior leaders. What is it that is discussed in that forum? So let's say there's a new use case proposed, right? Can you share a framework of the thought process on how to evaluate the risks on any new use case?
There are so many risks associated with adopting a new technology like generative AI. We've defined a robust set of foundational technologies to safeguard some risks that don't have to be done use case by use case. But even on top of that, each use case is evaluated. Each use case is unique. So I think what I will say is that the strategy is very well defined, And because this is a new area and there is so much innovation happening, I don't have a simple formula that I can share that would work for all the use cases that this council sees and reviews.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are so early in the journey as well that this technology itself is just a few years old at the end, like 3 years old. So I think this will also evolve, kind of like the infosec and the DPA processes of the organization. Right now, they are very mature that you get an Excel sheet whenever you want to, evaluate any new technology. But I'm sure that was not the case 20 years ago, right? I think we can move on and discuss a bit more about realities of some other realities of organizational constraints and resistance when it comes for uh, when you have to balance that versus the potential or the vision of AI. And you're at the center of all of this, Shoa, with the head of enterprise function, architecture function. So I'm sure you have to balance both of these things together. How do you think about this, and how do you balance the constraints and the resistance with the potential of AI?
That's a great question. And I'm a big believer that it's human nature, and I'm quoting somebody, but we underestimate what we can do in 5 years, and we overestimate what we can do in 1 year. So I'm a big believer that it's super important to have a bold and big vision for the long term. And that's another thing that I can vouch for the fact that that's part of American Express's DNA. It's a company that thinks for the long term. So just personally speaking on behalf of my own philosophy, I really think it's important to think big for the long term. And I don't mean the absolute long term, but a measurable long term, like 3 years or 5 years. And then I do think that you kind of have to be able to break down the sum into parts so that you're able to make progress towards that big vision in the short term.
No, absolutely sure. I think I'd love to wrap this up with one last question. I know we are coming up on time. Can you share one of these bold, big, or no, not that far off, but 3 to 5 year vision that you have, or what would you expect AI to be doing in 3 to 5 years for you?
I think that I'm excited to see how it is helping developers, and it's changing the way we write code. It's very different from when I was growing up, worrying about memory leaks and pointers, and then you had more advancements. So I'm very interested to see how it will be an aid to developer productivity. I also think there's so much information that can be composed to provide unique value. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. All the recommendations, all the ways in which our lives will be changed because of access to this amount of information.
I think this is amazing. Thank you so much for doing this with us today, Shoma. And thank you for coming on this podcast for our listeners.
It's been a pleasure.
Have a good day. Thank you, everybody.
American Express is not a customer of Leena AI, and Shoma's appearance on the podcast does not constitute an endorsement of Leena AI by American Express.